Why might a 5-year-old?
Because it's on her, it would seem to be on her level.
Right,
It's accessible somehow.
Yeah, but
And-
it's 15-year-old.
And because when you're 5, everyone tells you to color in the lines, and the baby says, "No, why do you have to color in the lines?"
So what would your mom if your mom's response to this event?
When
When you came here with your parents?
she probably would have said she didn't understand it. I don't know if she would have liked it or not. My parents were never the ones that said it. Was always the art teachers that told me that I had to paint in the lines. Not paint, color. In coloring books, like we need color, color in the lines.
So how could you, I mean, I think it's probably easier, especially like in general knowledge, to not,
Uh-huh.
right?
Getting awfully.
And what would you say?
I would say, why? Why is it a piece of crap? Like, why isn't it art? I mean, it's simplistic. It's not the normal, old, perfect. You can see what it is at first type thing. It's different.
It's not supposed to look real.
Yeah, it's not. Maybe he wasn't trying to make it look real.
So, ways you could find good things in a work like this.
It's very energetic. It's not just like stale and like let's make this perfect. It was almost like they were having fun with it. You could tell. They didn't agonize over every move, every stroke, every little piece of color. They didn't agonize over it.
Well, to those people who are thinking of realism as the ability to paint.
Guys?
Trying to come up with something to say.
Does anybody know about this artist?
Does anyone know anything about him?
Yeah.
There's some of his pictures in the magazine hanging up in painting class. I don't know anything about him. What'd you say, Joe? In our painting class, there's some of the stuff, like pictures from magazines hanging up. That's all I know.
He was sort of one of the fathers of the abstract expressionist movement. You know, the people that like Pollock was painting with, and Rothko and those people who are sort of the name brand into that shift away from Europe. So what we need we need to figure out how to argue a case for this painting against that painting. Both paintings, they're both fairly large scale. How is the intent, since that's one thing we picked up on, different between that painting from what, the 18th, 19th century, and this from
that was
mid 20th
intended.
century?
That was in back when people painted like that, and that's all they ever painted. There were things like no cameras. If you wanted to have that picture of someone forever, you had a painting done, because they didn't have cameras, they didn't have videotape, they didn't have. That was the only way they had to capture an image of a person.
So
It had to be
memorializing person somehow.
Right. It had to be realistic because that was the only way they had to capture that.
And also, you can't really tell from here, but that woman's dressed in like antique garb. She's the wife of
Some famous
some guy.
But,
It's Mrs. the Honorable Mrs. But so she's also being idealized and associated with other great things, like everything that's associated with ancient civilizations, and she has the Greek mythology, ancient, what do I want to say, classical mythology, associations to Athena and Venus and all that through just the accoutrement, what she's dressed in, the attributes they give her. So then you got this woman, no name, no specificity. What, woman 4, woman 6? Woman 6. Which gives us the sense that this is one in a series, which it is. There are more works by humans that look very similar to this. So what do you think he's trying to capture about this woman? What's the message he's sending
it's almost
out?
like it's not supposed to taking a walk somewhere, you might be struck with the way like a certain storefront looks, or the way a certain intersection looks. Like it just sticks out in your mind. If you went back through your day, like that's something that would just stick out to you. You never remember it exactly because your mind's not a picture perfect thing. You don't remember everything exactly the way it looks. So it's almost like this is someone he doesn't know. He may have just passed by, and it's not a very clear impression to him. I don't know.
How does he feel about that woman?
I don't know.
Is her one arm dislocated or something?
No, it's the angle where she's sitting at. That's the chair. That part right there. That's the chair behind it.
Well, I mean, to be more specific, how might de Kooning's feelings towards this woman differ from that artist's feelings towards that idealized?
I don't know how that artist, he might not have even known that woman, but whoever was paying for that portrait was paying for that image to come across. So he was painting not just a person, but an image and a personality that they wanted to come across.
Probably to some kind of specification.
So you're saying automatically that the relationship between the artist and the person being portrayed there is, the relationship is quite different in this one and this one, probably.
Yeah. This woman knew she was being painted. This woman had no idea.
You don't think she paid for that?
No. Heck no. I don't think she knew. She was like sitting around reading the book that people
The
liked.
others, yeah.
Well, Rich didn't like what I chose.
Which was that?
The only thing that's special about it is the way it's hung. But I don't even know if I like that.
Well, what do you think it's about? Why do you think he bought it to do that?
That was some expression or something that wanted to come through. Something was being worked through. It was just white.
So you're saying that because it's white, that you think that there's no expression and there's nothing moving through.
I think he was testing the limits of art.
So if he's testing, then what emotion would make him do that? Why would he want to test?
Isn't everybody weird?
Then would you say he succeeded?
Well, he's in the museum, isn't he?
Well, when other people see it, though, what do you think the effect is? Or, if he was really testing, what did he want from people walking through the museum?
I don't.
Is he getting it?
Yeah, he's definitely getting a reaction.
You think that he's getting the kind of reaction that do you think that he wanted one kind of reaction?
I mean, maybe he was testing to see how, what people can actually find in it, like good qualities, and how many people actually didn't like it.
So you're basically saying that he's working on about the definition of art somehow. So which is a conceptual thing, right? It's an idea that something about, what really is a painting. And are you saying that when people see this, you think that they are actually launched into that space of worrying about what a painting is?
Automatically. The first reaction most people have when they see something like that is, how could you call that art? It's just a white canvas.
So do you think
I mean,
most people
automatically,
stop
that's
right
what-
there?
I would say most people. I wouldn't say everybody, because there's always a couple exceptions, but I would say most people.
Mm-hmm. How do you think what do you think the artist would think about that?
I think that's what he wanted, partially. I mean, if he got it this far, I think he was first testing it to see how far it could get, that concept, that idea of not putting much into it. Not that he didn't put much into it, but I mean, it's just a solid canvas. That idea to see how far that could get.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he ever expected it to get that far. It did. I forget.
You mean because of its location in the museum? that's a measure of how far it's gotten, or
Not of location, just that it's in
Yeah.
it, that it wasn't like laughed at and forgotten. You know, that we're sitting around right here debating it right now. I think that's.
Well, it's being here suggests that there's somebody thinks it's important for some reason. And somebody who knows something about it probably thinks it's important for some reason.
how could that idea of pushing the limits and testing and, redefining that you see in this work of art relate to other realms
You mean of art?
of life?
Ooh, that's a big one.
I mean, how could how could you find meaning in this? Because you're not finding seemingly visual meaning. I mean, there's no narrative going on there. There's not color for you to associate with. How can you take away meaning from what you've just discussed?
And if we're talking about testing, we're talking about testing what an authority is, testing an authority, challenging the rules that I already know. Every person goes through that. It's called, growing up. Like there comes a time when you leave home and you start to challenge your parents and you challenge your teachers and your professors. I mean, that happens in every person.
And why do you do that?
Because it's part of growing up. You're a person. You have
But,
to
but what is it about growing up that requires you to do that? I mean, where are you trying to get that inspires people to be rebellious or testing or anything? Why do they need to do that to be an adult?
I mean, it's a challenge. There comes a point you can accept everything anyone's ever told you. There comes a point when you have to realize it for yourself. And that's even if you don't become rebellious or anything, even just challenging what someone has told you, or
Right, so you kind of have to create your own definitions of things. And there's a lot of them out there, so you've got to figure out which ones you're going to adopt. Right? Or make up new ones or whatever. I mean, you can't say fine for everything. Everybody's got a different philosophy that's conflicting.
So can you respect that?
no.
In that context, can you respect that given this context?
I respect the person.
Is there a difference between the physical or the aesthetic appeal and the content, or how are they related to each other in some of these different things?
Well, the visual, that's what's going to hit you first. And maybe that's where you're going to lose a lot of things too, because what you see is you're not going to, your first opinion is probably not going to, your first impression is not going to change until you have to figure out.
Until what?
Well, your aesthetic feel it can change the more you think about it. The more you turn it over in your head, the more your ideas are going to change and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the more things you discover about it.
Made that up. But what else could it be about? I don't know. That's exactly what Andy Warhol did. He tested the limits of what art were known to be. Lots of people don't like his work. You don't have to like his work. You have to recognize what he did. No, we like to make fun of it.
Well, there's a different, understanding what artists' intent were, what they were thinking about, what their concepts are is different. That you can understand it and then like it or dislike it, but generally you lose a lot if you don't bother to find out, or to delve deeply into figuring out what ideas were being dealt with. And it's really less important whether you really like it or don't like it than just, being interested in what's going on.
I think that's a lot to expect of a person, though, to delve deep into something that they really don't. I mean, if we weren't standing here like having this conversation and I wasn't forced to think about it, I would never think about that. I would pass by it and not worry about it.
What it is. like what like your first impression was.
I mean, yeah.
Well, that's what you're saying is that you couldn't. I mean, if you think of, I don't know, you sort of think of an artist, the need to market the thing. If you want people to think to that extent, you got to manage not to turn them away from it. If,
Well,
But
if you were
maybe.
trying to get people to think about this idea about the definition of art and the limitations of art and so forth, and you wanted to do it in a way that you thought would suck people in and get them to really think about it, what would you do? Like? I'm not saying that we'll be able to all come up with better ideas than him right on the spot here, but.
Everybody knows who, just to use the same example, everyone knows who Andy Warhol is, especially in Pittsburgh. You hear the name over and over and over, and you're like, oh yeah, Andy Warhol. It's because he did the same thing, but he did it completely differently. He used a whole culture. He used a whole culture, and things like just bright things, like portraits of famous people that people would recognize. And he used silver a lot, just catchy things that no matter who you are, it catches your eye.
When you say he did the same thing, what do you mean exactly?
He tested
Which limits do you think he was testing?
what art is. People would look at his stuff and say, that's trash. You know, you're
Do you
taking,
think that they're both testing the same limits, or?
no, they're different limits, but it's still the limits of art, of what you define as art.
How would you compare these two? The one that I smart.
why do you think why, when we were walking on Galaxy Floor, why do you think several of you identify that as being wrong? Why not?
It always looked like when I looked at it, it always looked
Like it was
this.
cut out?
like that was like part of this, and it was like the white part was just sitting on
Oh, but
resting.
it's actually on the painting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it? Yep. Yes. You can see it when you look inside the clip there. And this one is the usually the lower left corner. So what difference does it make to you to know that?
I like the fact that it's like an illusion. It's nothing really significant to me. I mean, I didn't ever notice until now, but I still think that it doesn't make much of a difference for the quality of a piece.
Why do you think you put it on there?
I don't know.
When you guys get close to this, does the fact that you can see traces of the brush, does that affect you at all? Or the materials? Because he hasn't used just canvas. It's oil on aluminum. Does any of that make a difference? Because you can see where his brush is at.
He also takes the edge. You can see that this is unpainted too, like the border.
Is that consideration of material and technique do anything to change? I mean, once you've now spent time looking at it?
Well, I actually consider it more of an experimentation when I'm like just testing different materials and techniques.
Well, if this painting, is about questioning the definition of art. And what do you think?
What she came up with about how it was like a test, just to like define the limits of like maybe painting or art or whatever. This one's untitled number 9. Doesn't have anything like. Usually the name gives me at least something to start thinking about. But this, I mean, it's untitled. It doesn't really have any kind of anything to catch me. Like not even any materials that seem like a odd combination, like an experimentation. It's just, I don't know. I really don't care for it.
Well, she could have done anything. I mean, she could have painted any kind of picture, but she chose to, to put the paint on there and to get a pencil and line up all these lines like that. Why do you think she bothered to do that?
I don't know.
Well, do you think it's about a different topic than the other one, or?
So given the trouble that we're having, I mean, it's taking a lot of thinking to work through this stuff. What needs to be accomplished? How can we meet those objectives we've already talked about for that lunchroom discussion through a discussion about art?
Well, these pieces.
Start anywhere.
His work, it really doesn't grab me. It's same old stuff, most of the work was all done just like this. A lot of his pieces are done the same way. That really doesn't grab me a lot. Like his work compared to like somebody else's, because if you look at all his pieces, he always has like the outline of another, like a base and the outline of another color. On each piece, one of his pieces, most of his pieces, I really don't find that to be very.
So you're saying that because they're predictable?
Yeah.
That you just like that, because he's not surprising you. You've seen one, you've seen them all, kind of thing?
Yeah, sort of.
What else?
That's like the main reason why I really don't like his work.
Well, what about like the punching bags? And, I know that you all have been to the Warhol Museum a few times.
Actually, I haven't. I haven't been to the
haven't?
Warhol. No, I wasn't here for
About
the
time. What about like the Last Supper and the things that aren't necessarily portraits? There's a variety of other things that are up there. Do you dislike them equally, or is it mainly the portraits that have the lines and?
Yeah, mainly it's the portraits that I really don't like. Like there, he has that one room with the, it's like the little balloons, whatever it is, the circles. I like that. That's pretty neat. And like the picture of was it Elvis? And there's multiple of them. I like that.
That's a good, fair question.
Well, I don't know. It looks like it's evenly proportioned. I like that. I think it's pretty cool how I forget how he did it. Though. It's like it was silk screen. Matter of fact, yeah. I always like silk screen, so I thought that was pretty interesting, just because of the style. But there's the lining on the face and stuff. I don't like that. The outlines. I don't.
you're on top of the Elvis thing?
So why do you think Warhol made these, as opposed to like a regular photograph? Because he's starting with, say a little picture of Andrew Carnegie, that's just a regular picture. So he made it really big. He put a lot of colors on there that aren't natural, a lot of bright colors, and then he did all this drawing on top of it. Why do you think you did that?
Because he could. By
Well, there's a
that,
lot of things you can do. You make it, there's some compelling reason why you decide that you really want to do something, though.
he also took a bunch of boxes, painted them to look just like a Brillo box, and put them in a museum in a sack. Like, I mean, he what else? I don't know.
So why did he do
took-
that?
He did that. I think he did that because of where he came from. He didn't start like as an artist who was painting pictures to express something or I don't know, for whatever other reason artists work. He started in the advertising industry, in the advertising business. So when he was done advertising, what did he have left to do? He went to things that he would advertise. Brillo pads, Campbell's soup cans, you know, company names, and use that. And he only, instead of calling it an advertisement, he called it a piece of art.
So what does that mean? If he takes something that's in the commercial world and it's, like an ad for something, or it's a commercial thing, and he puts it in the museum, what's the difference about it then?
Purpose. He changed also, I guess, how he showed it. Instead of glamorizing it, he still glamorized certain things, but he would like crush it and make it used, and that's something you just didn't do in the advertising industry at the time. I think he was all about testing limits.
Which limits?
Limits that say what you can and can't put in a gallery. Before Warhol, no one would have put a Brillo box in a gallery. No one would have put a painting of an everyday, like Campbell's soup can in
So
a gallery.
what does it mean
wouldn't happen.
if you put that in a museum and you call it fine art? What's the meaning of it? Anybody else? Does everyone agree that there's no meaning to having people look at Campbell's soup cans as art, or just as something that you could have lunch with?
He's changing the way people see it. When I think of meaning, it's like working with, I don't know.
Well, significance, maybe meaning the word is loaded, but it means something different if it's in a different place. It doesn't mean it's almost time to eat, or it doesn't mean like if there was nothing else, you would still have something left to eat. It has a different it has a different function in a gallery than it does on a shelf in a store or in your house. So what is it? Any ideas? I'm not saying there's it's not a multiple choice or true false. I'm trying to figure out what, have you think of a little bit about what the difference is. I mean, these are big questions that, there's no one answer to, and people spend whole books on lives.
No matter how much you argue one point, someone else is still going to argue the other.
Does that mean you shouldn't argue?
No, it's fun to argue.
What's the point of arguing?
I think part of a point of arguing is just to understand. Because when you argue, not fight, but when you argue, you have to come to understand what the other person is talking about, if the argument ever ends,
Right, well, I heard Ron a minute ago say that he hated Warhol, and then as we started to discuss it a little more, it turned out that there was a particular aspect of Warhol's work that turned out that he really disliked, but there actually are other parts of his work that you like, right? So through that discussion, we learned that he didn't really hate Warhol per se, but he liked some of the things Warhol does, and he disliked some of the things Warhol does. If we hadn't discussed it, we would have all believed that he disliked everything Warhol did. Simple observation on my part. Take it for what it's worth.
Well, the value of discussion is being able to see something through someone else's eyes. Hopefully, if you're doing it with an open mind, as opposed to just a stubborn.
But a lot of times it's to discover what you think yourself. Because I know that unless I have a discussion, a lot of times I don't even know what I think about something until I discuss my ideas.
And if someone accepts everything you ever say, you just stop thinking about it. But if someone comes along and challenges something you say, then you're forced to think about it.
Right, you have to think a little deeper, more deeply.
So it's not just, this is, it's why, and explain it.
Well, you want to go talk about this, Kelly, the little furniture and the outfits one, or we have time to talk about one more thing. So whoever has the strongest feeling about anything that we can see sort of right around here, pick it out and let's do it.
So she looks like,
As opposed to flat, square canvas. Twisted, it's softer off. Anybody not like this? Or just not particularly moved by it? Scary movie.
How does it remind you of Hellraiser? I'm curious. So I think our bigger goal is really to create curiosity instead of hostility.
Very good. So, what? Ask questions or
So,
what?
so this is
About
your
what?
opportunity. You can ask Sushan anything about her work that you'd like to know.
I mean, you know a little bit of what. Have you seen things or no?
I
It's
know
difficult.
very
It's
little.
just difficult
I
to
told them
talk out of the
about the
blue.
piece that I heard that you did in Johannesburg,
Yes.
and that's kind of as much as I know. I know very little. So if you want to, describe
that's-
anything about other things you've done,
Or. Yeah, Johannesburg is maybe it's a very. I mean, but
do you want to tell about that piece?
Yeah, that's maybe quite good and easy.
Good example.
Because it's very concrete. I mean, it's very, very immediate. It started with a performance, actually, that I did with people, and it's called The Loudspeaker. You are the loudspeaker, and they're on the left and on the right of you, two people whispering in your ear at the same time. And, they can say whatever they want me to say. I mean, the task of, why they tell their story to me. And I try to say loud everything what I can hear. But because there are two, it's impossible to get all the information, right? So this impossibility of getting everything, sort of creates a new text or a new way of, I can't be busy with trying to really make my text understandable. I just function as a loudspeaker, literally. I mean, I'm just trying to say everything, even though I don't understand what they're telling me, or even I might not understand the language even. So that's something that interests me a lot. That sort of to create a state of impossibility, so you still do it, and why you do it. I mean, it's just
When it's impossible.
yeah, it's sort of. That's a sort of contradiction, right? Doing something which is impossible. It's I mean, it's not impossible, but the task is impossible to fulfill.
Right.
But you can also discuss about what is the task then. It's not about making yourself understandable in the normal sense of way. So that's also what interests me about language, for instance. What the hell? Now I'm trying to tell you something that you understand, but what if I would start talking in whatever language, and maybe you will understand much more. Yeah, I mean, you don't know what is this sort of illusion about understanding, agreement on words or whatever. I mean, this whole thing for me is not so clear. And somehow, so it gives me a sort of this desire to play with it, right? To mess around with it, but yet somehow in this loudspeaker, the form is so clear. So it's sort of like a game, and you set up rules and you do it. And somehow it's not so much the rules which are interesting, but what they create, right? The situation they create. Maybe you also have it with gambling or games. It's not interesting because of the rules, but because of the, you know what I mean? The how do you call it? Inzet. Well, the gambling is another desire,
Chance.
right? Chance or whatever it could be. I mean, I don't want to try to analyze it now, but I think think there's something else happening with it, which just use that game for. And probably this loudspeaker is similar, and to do with this language and possibility of making yourself understandable and using that. Yeah, so in what was for me interesting, I there was a performance before. I did it a few times live. We could try doing it here. I mean, it's so simple, you know. You don't need anything. You just
different
need two people and one in the middle. I mean, that's, you know, it's a very transportable.
Yeah, beautiful.
Doesn't have to be packed. It's a very easy piece. No, and in Johannesburg it was interesting because I wondered what can I do in Johannesburg. You know, I'm coming from Europe and going there, invited for Bayan. I mean, it's such a. I got also interested in how can I transfer work. I mean, I was also busy with. I don't want to pack a crate 3 months before, and then, you know, the crate is going to be shipped, and after 3 months later I just travel to that space, and then I will come there, and of course the space that we have reserved for me is not the right space, because the space, you know, is a little bit too big, and it has this problem, and, you know, I'm then confronting myself with a problem that although I have been perfectly communicating with those people, there is a problem, right, waiting for me. It's my convincement. So I can be, this 2 weeks that I try to put up the work, I can be busy with this problem, right, to solve it. Yeah? To make this place a little bit like, oh, whatever, to adjust this whole thing. But this is a boring way of being busy and being present. Yeah, being present in the space, you know.
Right,
And I think like I'm just trying to, you know, I'm always busy with this problem. So I thought, how can I transform this problem into a sort of situation which would inspire me, which would give me much more, I don't know, a challenge to do something, to think of new ways, you know. And so I first, for instance, in Santa Fe, I told them I don't want a space, exhibition space. Yeah, what are you gonna do? Well, I'm gonna prepare mentally or whatever. I said to them, you know, I have my ideas and bring them with me. I will prepare myself in another way, not physically. So they said, of course, okay, yeah, everything is possible, it's okay. At the same time, there was a sort of the difficulty, because asking again, are you sure, and so on.
It's an unknown at that point.
I also had the feeling that there is always space enough. I mean, I was sure, you know, there's always spaces people don't think of, that they are there. So I knew space is not the problem. It is a problem in the way when it's reserved for you. Then you have to fill it in.
You have parameters, right?
You know, then you are given something, and it can be very interesting as well. I mean, this situation here is more like that in a way, but it's another way of dealing maybe with the same problem. But at that point, I was
selecting the space, and then the way it already is the problem. After you select,
you know, in this extreme way, how I'm telling about the way that I say I don't want a space. If you really put yourself into a situation that you are risking, you know, that you cannot prepare physically, you cannot really be assured of 20, you know, square meters,
right,
or whatever. So you have to fill in the space in a totally other way. You know what I mean? It's not about filling the space. It's about that you have to give your idea a form at that moment while you're there. You have to give it a space. You create that space, you know. It's not so much, and which I find really. I like that idea very much, I must say. Somehow it's because space is never a problem. It's really not really a problem.
How much of the place, you know, whether it's Johannesburg or Pittsburgh, helps you define for yourself how things are going to materialize? You know, what strikes you about this location, about this environment that might affect your decision making.
You mean
what
this?
You do.
This?
Just this,
or-
as in
or
a
anything.
museum or Pittsburgh or anything. If, a geographical location or, the physical. Like,
Yes.
what's
A lot of different. It's everything every time different. I mean, there is a. I think I'm fascinated about this space in a sense that to occupy a space as a creator or as a also viewer. To take your space and your time for a thing. I mean, how should I say it? I was very, for instance, in Santa Fe, it was that I was interested in how the spectator, how can I create a space that the spectator moving into the exhibition can move out of the exhibition again, within the exhibition, move out of it again, and to offer a place where this space, which I offer, yes, will create totally other time. So you will be, you can take your time, like 3 hours, nobody even would notice because you are disappeared out of the exhibition, like this. And so to sort of interrupt this, when you walk in a museum normally, you see this work and then you move a little bit on. And so the time and the space you're moving in gets its own dynamic, nothing to do with the individual time and space. It's some sort of strange public dynamics. And you really have to interrupt them with your consciousness, otherwise
You just become.
you get tired. You get tired also. Why do people always get tired in museums? It's because I think there is this sort of strange cloud, which sort of, wraps you in this sort of certain monotonous, and you need a lot of strength spiritually, sort of, to interrupt that. You can do it. I mean, even in music, it's not a problem. It's also. It's just up to you, yeah. But maybe it's also that I try to create, not to help the viewer, but maybe it's my own interest to create these spaces. So this is just my desires of what sort of spaces I want to be, like in a museum or whatever place, Can also be in another place, like in a hospital as well. You get a certain feeling, which is just overall. So how to create a space that's private or. But in Johannesburg, for instance, it had another load. It was it's such a complex culture situation there, political, that this also sort of influenced me, my way of preparing myself. So all these different languages, heritages, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do there? I mean, I'm coming there as a stranger, doing my work, and then sort of. Then the loudspeaker was a perfect thing to do there, because I would just not understand. I'm the one who doesn't understand anything, and I still get all the time these stories. So I'm a sort of translator, but what I say is my impossibility of getting all that, So that creates the language I have. So for me, really, the loudspeaker in that place in Johannesburg was perfectly coming together with the idea of the loudspeaker. And so I did it with 15 people, all different languages, and we made a videotape, like they would change also every 4 minutes. One side would change, and there was another person come, and after 4 minutes this would have changed.
Did your ability to synthesize the sounds change over time as you practiced it, or was it constant?
No, it's always different, but I think, it depends on your state of how you are. I mean, but maybe it's also the danger that you develop a certain technique, how to deal with it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
At the same time, you need it, right?
It would be very different than if you've been doing it for a long time, because you would have done it before.
Yes, but you develop your own technique to sort of try to do really your work, right? So it's, of course, this will change. And because I also, I'm quite used to performing somehow, because I was working in a theater before and so on and so on. So it was not so alien to me to be in the situation of doing that. But yet, probably the danger is to do it too professionally. To really try to be honestly busy with the task this performance is about.
Right.
And yeah, and then all these different languages was quite funny. I mean, also to do it with languages you don't understand at all.
Yeah.
You feel like a ape, like you're just imitating, like a
Right.
child.
Uh-huh.
And when you understand, you make up secretly your own story. Or, you sort of like certain parts, and you're all the way struggling with your desires, and at the same time trying to get back, reposition yourself. But all these little stadiums of cheating, but also trying to do it, and not able. And anyway, it's so in the installation in Johannesburg, I made this tape, and then I put it in it was you had a little house you could get into. You can lock yourself up in this balcony, and there was a telescope, and in the telescope you could see the image very far away. There was a little monitor showing this image of the performance, but you could hear the performance in the box.
Do you guys have questions about, more general questions, kind of things we were talking about before? You'd like to know?
How did you get started in art?
How?
Yeah, how? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I think you start really early because you have different sorts of starts, I think. I started after I finished school, and then I had to think, what shall I do? And I just looked in the brochure, and I thought, okay, this sounds, I want to do something with dance. I was interested in psychology, and music I liked as well, so I tried to find something which would sort of, but it's theoretical, yeah? You think you have a desire, and then you try to find and to read, and you say, okay, I try this, and then I went to Germany. I was living in Japan, and I went to Germany. I started studying music there, in rhythmics, with movement, improvisation, and so on. But then, okay, you find out that this is not the right thing. You stop, you change subjects, and I went to the music theater department as a performer. From this, you get to know somebody, and I ended up in a little theater, working there for 9 years, doing anything. I mean, that was actually the very important period, because while doing things, you can just develop your interests and desires, and you just create your own continuity in what you are interested in and you're using anything which comes around your path, to take you, just to get anything out of it, what you like. That's the way, I think. That's one start. The other start is, I think, that as a child you create your own precious world, right? Although you have to go to school, although you have to whatever, despite all those things which are asked from you, you create the world that you want to be in, and give that a sort of continuity within your life, whatever. I don't know. Therefore I don't know where it started, really. I mean, like mentally, or how should I say, emotionally, or.
Did you think of yourself
somehow
as
it's I think very early. Yeah.
Did you think of yourself as an artist when you were in school?
In school, no. I never thought about artists or anything like that.
What,
I mean,
did
even
you start yet?
music. Pardon?
Did you start yet?
No, but that's for me with this thing. Artist came up with the visual art sort of scene.
Mm-hmm.
Each scene has its own group, right? So this scene.
So when you were doing music and dance and theater, you weren't thinking of yourself as an artist?
No, this is not called artist in Germany, at least not.
Uh-huh.
It's more musician,
word.
performer,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, it's so, I mean, when the first started, like, what artist? It sounds so, I don't know,
Unfamiliar?
so important suddenly.
Oh.
I mean,
So
which is not
when
that
did
I
you
mean it's
switch
not
into that
important,
gear?
but I mean, it's a little bit, what?
When did you switch into that gear of thinking of yourself as an artist?
I mean, it's just a convention. that suddenly you learn to say, okay, not to
Here's the
prevent,
title,
not to having to say I'm not an artist, or this is again as stupid as to say
Mhm.
I'm an artist,
Right.
but somehow it's just a habit which grows, right? Because you are in this field. So it's just the circumstances which create these words and definitions and things like that. I think you yourself, for doing anything, it's just you continue, and it really depends. It's so relative to the situation. Probably also culture, all those things. Yeah. I don't connect so much value with this. Yeah.
These guys have to
Yeah.
head back to
Okay.
school.
Unless I have a remote.
Continue, or what's the?
You already made the videotape.
Well,
That's his.
Oh, that's his.
That will be how it goes.
Okay. Hi. Nice to meet you. Oh, I see. Yeah, Coca-Cola.